Hey everyone, Mike Miller, Herald Times, joined by the columnist, Jeremy Price, coming to you on a lovely Friday evening at Assembly Hall. It's really cold outside. Glad we were inside because it's going to be really cold tomorrow afternoon.
It was really cold outside this afternoon at Big Ten soccer, too. I needed this game to thaw out.
Yeah, I bet you did. Gosh. Cold night for the Bobcats of Montana State, I guess you could say as well.
Yeah.
Only 35 points here in a 80-35 Indiana victory. The 35 points scored by Montana State are the fewest by an IU opponent in Assembly Hall since Notre Dame came in here and scored 29 in December of 1971. So some distance between those two performances. What sounds like a pretty barren roster of Notre Dame coming in here back then, according to resident historian Andy Graham. And this certainly a lesser opponent, one of the lesser opponents on this first week schedule. You get these two out of the way. Now you get into this all-important week here. We have two potential Quadrant 1 games with Marquette here on Wednesday night, followed by a trip to Arkansas. This was, absolutely just a tune-up week for Indiana, but an important one at that because these are two crucial games coming up for Indiana in short succession.
Yeah, I think we hit sort of this transition period. IU had these two games to sort of ease into things this year. Obviously got a couple easy wins, got everybody kind of feeling good about themselves and off to a positive start, which this team certainly needed. But how this translates from this week to next week, I'm not sure there's a lot to take from that other than, if anything, I think it would be, Archie Miller would say, we can be a lot better defensively. I've seen a few of these pop-up headlines tonight on historic defensive performance, and I thought it was an okay defensive performance, and I guess by the point total it was certainly historic, but I didn't think IU was great defensively necessarily. Montana State certainly had a number of open looks which they just couldn't knock down, and they had some shuffling feet inside, guys that obviously aren't ready for this kind of length and athleticism at this level necessarily. And probably you factor in Montana State's quick trip from the west to here, and then they're hopping back on the plane or bus or whatever they took and going back to Montana for a home game on Sunday, I think. So, you factor all those things in. I don't know if you can take a whole lot that says Indiana is some defensive powerhouse necessarily, but I think they've got the potential to be a good defensive team, and they've shown flashes of that, but they're going to have to play better against Marquette and Arkansas than they've played defensively against Chicago State and Montana State.
Yeah, no doubt. We continue to see certain different lineups. You saw some of the the different guard combinations. You saw Deron Davis and Juwan Morgan. Some of just the continuing different combinations we've seen. Offensively, I think in that same vein that you went in on, the shooting is still a bit of a concern. Just maybe shot selection, maybe more than anything, with a team that doesn't have it hasn't cured all of its ills on the shooting front. Although it certainly has some potential to be better than last year, but still, I think shot selection might be. I think they're still feeling it out is probably the best way to put it right now.
Yeah, and I think tonight was maybe a step in the right direction of making sure the ball goes inside, and I think you're going to see even more of that as the competition ramps up. I think you're going to see a more concerted effort to get that ball inside to Juwan Morgan, to have Justin Smith working that baseline area, those kind of things. I think those are priority one, and then if you get some good three-point looks off of that, that's great. It'll be interesting also to see how much zone does Indiana see next week against Marquette and Arkansas. They obviously saw quite a bit of that against Chicago State and Montana State, but those are teams that are athletically inferior, and it probably better suits them to play a zone against an Indiana, whereas Marquette and Arkansas are going to, be able to potentially match up on a little more equal level, and so you could see a completely different, some different offensive looks, I think, going into next week. So again, it's debatable how much are we really going to be able to take at either end of the floor from this week to next week. But I think that's a good thing for Indiana because the more you diversify that portfolio, the more you're prepared for whatever teams throw at you down the road.
The one thing we do know is that this is going to be a team that's not going to have Jerome Hunter probably for the foreseeable future, it sounds like. I mean, this sounds like a not necessarily a long-term season thing, but certainly it sounds like at least a month. It doesn't sound like there's any Jerome Hunter's any closer to seeing the floor than he was at the start of this week, dealing with what was classified last week as a foot injury. It's now a leg injury. It doesn't really, there's not a whole lot clear there exactly what's wrong. But
something below the hip.
Something below the hip, yes. That's exactly right. Might as well just, but we're getting the hockey classifications here now. lower body injury for Jerome Hunter. But yet again, you saw other guys kind of claim some of those minutes. And too, Zach McRoberts didn't play beyond the 10-minute mark, I think, of the first half, dealing with some back stiffness. So we kind of talked the other night, just as this team has dealt with some of the injury things that have popped up. Maybe some of the, when you look at all the depth and you look at it, maybe a dozen or so guys in the mix for roles here on this team, it's almost kind of, feeling itself out organically right now with the guys that they do have. You're seeing guys step up in certain situations. Demezy Anderson's still getting a lot of minutes. Demezy Anderson's still kind of Demezy Anderson, but you're also seeing Al Durham got back in the mix tonight. Night for him, really, just to kind of get back in the swing of things. Nothing too noteworthy there, but it's still a tinkering of sorts with some of the combinations and players that you can kind of throw out there.
Yeah, and Race Thompson made a late appearance tonight, but it sounds like he's just getting back and not anywhere near the shape that they feel that he needs to be in to play significant minutes. But, they're going to have 5 or 6 days here 5 days, I guess, to sort of work towards that and see if he can work into the mix. Hunter, Archie said a significant stretch. Like you said, I think that's at least a month. You're probably looking at Christmas, probably best case scenario. And if it goes beyond that, you start to wonder, is he better served to possibly redshirt even this year? I don't think that's something they anticipated doing going into this year. But, if we're talking a lingering injury that's going to go into the Big Ten season and he still hasn't played, as this team starts to sort of pare down the rotation and figure things out, I think that's always a possibility with this team. Right now it's not ideal because you're not able to start out the season with all the optimal lineups you want to kind of get a look at and try out, but at the same time they're getting to experiment with a lot of different guys, a lot of different combinations, and I think in the long run this could be a blessing in disguise that you're going to have a lot of guys ready to go, ready to chip in and whatever the case may be, whether you got injury issues, you got foul trouble issues, just style of play type things. Demezy Anderson's probably going to be a guy, if somebody wants to throw a zone at you, you put him out there, see if he can be a zone buster for you. If they're going man-to-man, high pressure, then he's probably not the guy you want to put in the game. So, I think a lot of different looks. Deron Davis has seen a fair bit of minutes in these first 2 games. The competition ramps up. I don't know how much we're going to actually see Deron Davis. I mean, it's pretty clear that Archie feels like he's not anywhere near full-go game shape for a top-level opponent necessarily, and not where he needs to be necessarily defensively for a top-level opponent. So I think you're maybe looking at, what has been 8 to 10 minutes here these first couple of games.
6
maybe. Or 3 to 5, just, spot minutes.
A couple hockey shifts.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. But even that, to go back to one of your previous points about just maybe seeing some zone, with the personnel that they do have, and I think we saw this in the little bits, particularly early on last year when they did see some zone in November, December. First of all, it seems like a team that better understands, is frankly just better coached to handle the zone, I think, now with some of the movement we've seen with the ball and just, getting into the soft spots. But also you have a guy like Evan Fitzner who has that length and has kind of that long-range game that can kind of beat his zone. You have potentially Justin Smith, who I think is his game almost suited to that type of stuff.
Yes.
And even Juwan Morgan too. So even if that is something that Indiana does see in the coming weeks, it almost does seem like maybe this team, to at least some degree, has some of the specialized talents that can get in there and play against the zone at least decently.
Yeah, and they've got the patience they need to have against a zone. Something the Montana State coach was talking about, how he thought that they were playing fairly decent defense, but Indiana was reversing the ball, moving it from one side to the other, and they'd get on the 3rd, 4th, 5th side, and something would open up, even if they worked the shot clock down to 5 or 10 seconds. And they were just really patient about probing and passing the ball until something opened up. And that's something we saw a little bit last year and continue to see this year. I think they'll be even better this year. Rob Finney is a very patient guy at the point guard spot, not with a quick trigger. Obviously, like you said, Juwan and Justin are really good at working the middle and the baseline. I would add Evan Fitzner to that mix, and obviously he can float outside and be a threat to shoot the three too. And I thought they did a good job of having some threats. Moving the ball. Fitzner would ball fake and then pass. Romeo would ball fake and pass. Finney would ball fake and pass. And so you get that defense on the move until you kind of get it out of position or get the offense overloaded on one side and something opens up. So, yeah, really encouraging signs as far as that goes, for sure.
Personnel-wise, absolutely. All right, that's probably, we did the standard length anyway. So.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's probably all we should say about this game, but we said a lot. So with that, we're going to go get some sleep and go back and watch a pretty important football game, relatively speaking. At noon tomorrow.
We'll defer judgment on just how important that game is until afterwards, I guess.
Could be good. Yeah, could be. Yeah.
But anyway, yes. On football.
On the football.